today on A Hit of Health?
Well, today we're going to hit on 5 techniques, and I encourage anybody listening, you can go on the internet and Google coping skills, and they can give you hundreds. Today we're going to hit on 5 specific ones that I think is a really good jumping off point that can cover some of our bases. Good old-fashioned exercise. I know, it sounds basic, but truly with anxiety, it's such a good tool. Anything sensory can help bring us back down to earth. We could fret and be anxious about the state of the world, or we could be stuck inside and we can figure out a way to work on ourselves. We can figure out a way to manage the anxiety that comes up so it's not so intrusive. My body's trying to tell me, I'm anxious, I need to do something. So a good sign is check our bodies, check what's happening, and kind of analyze, am I tensing up, am I going faster? And then once we know that, we can address it a little quicker. I'm in.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. We are live. Episode number 1.
Hello.
Tom Jones on the line.
Hello. How you doing?
How you doing today? I'm doing good. Doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm maintaining social distancing and all the other stuff we're supposed to do. So a little lonely, but other than that, this is my socialization for today. So I'm excited.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll try to not be too boring. See if we can keep it a little entertaining. Get you out of the
mental health is never boring.
Oh, there we go. Well, I'm definitely excited about this to learn a little bit, share a little bit of tips and tricks, and yeah. So I guess we can just jump in. I mean, we're talking about maintaining mental health during a quarantine. It's a crazy time. I don't think it requires any crazy adjustments to be doing some simple things, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this. Yeah, man. What are some of the problems that we're trying to avoid here? How can I get all messed up because of this?
Well, before we go do anything, do the people need to know who I am to make sure that I'm not just some schmo that's coming on your podcast to just talk randomness?
People, do you need to know who he is? They're roaring. They're roaring. They need to hear. Okay, so why don't we do that? Who the heck are you?
So I'm Tom. I am a therapist in the Atlanta area. I work at a hospital and an outpatient facility. I've got a master's degree in marriage and family therapy, and I'm currently going for my full licensure, licensed professional counselor degree right now. So I'm still early in the game, but I know a little bit about mental health, and I know, more importantly right now, the dangers of what can happen if we're cooped up too much inside, or if we spend not enough time socializing. And Nate, you were nice enough to invite me on and maybe talk about some of these things, just a couple to make sure that we don't go crazy while we're all cooped up during this social distancing kind of stuff.
Well, I'm really just trying to make sure that I don't do it, and if anybody else can get some benefit out of it, all the better.
Perfect.
Yeah, good, dude. Obviously you and I go a long way back, and I'm glad that you were kind enough to talk about this and to share a little knowledge that you have, and even through our talks outside of this right here, I find you to be a guy who's kind and considerate and thoughtful and gives a shit about people and things, and so that's why I think everybody will like to hear from a guy like you. So thank you.
Well,
again.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah.
Let's see what we can hit on then. Where do you want to start? We want to start with some of the problems that could happen.
I think so. I mean, I think why don't we jump into kind of what the risks are and what is this dangerous? Is there a risk? And if so, what's the problem here?
Yeah. I look at it as right now we've got two options, and both of them are not ideal, but one is definitely worse than the other. And our two options are either we can stay indoors all the time and just live in kind of anxiety and fear and worry about, did I do this right? Did I maintain a distance today? We could fret and be anxious about the state of the world, or we could be stuck inside and we can figure out a way to work on ourselves. We can figure out a way to manage the anxiety that comes up so it's not so intrusive, and also maybe get a little bit of self-awareness. I mean, we got time on our hands. Now's a better time than any other to do a little self-reflection and figure out, what are my issues, what are my potential areas of weakness, and how can I make sure that they're being managed. So a good place to start here is noticing what happens when I get anxious. What happens when you, the listener, has a specific anxious emotion? How do we behave? And a lot of times that can look like living out scenarios in your head that are scary, like catastrophizing or over worrying about, or if I step outside, then I'm definitely going to get sick. And if I'm definitely going to get sick, I'm going to hurt the people around me. And if they get sick, it's my fault. And we're kind of living in this catastrophe world. And that can be incredibly anxiety-provoking. It can prompt anyone to shut down and not want to leave the house. And so it's important that we recognize when that's starting to happen. Another thing we have to worry about is repression, making sure we're not in our isolation, making sure we're not repressing all of our experiences, repressing all of our emotions. That can lead to all sorts of bottling behaviors, which then comes out as irritability, sadness, depression, further isolative behaviors. And it can, what we call it comes out sideways when we hold it all in. So I can speak to myself when I get really anxious, when I get in my head too often, I just kind of live in a fantasy world where it's just, I'm not connected to my own experience. I'm not connected to what's happening around me. I'm just in a completely isolated headspace. And oftentimes that can cause a problem with me connecting with those around me because I'm just off in fantasyland. So those are some of the potential issues I think are safe to look out for.
Tom, really quick, and I know that it's obviously anxiety is, but just what is anxiety? I mean, how do I know that I'm anxious? How do I know that I'm experiencing anxiety? What does it feel like? What does it look like from the outside?
Yeah. So each person is going to be a little bit different, but there are some core things to look out for. Anxiety is a quick emotion in that it makes your body react a little faster. Your heart starts beating a little bit faster. You notice sometimes you have tremors, sometimes even headaches. My anxiety presents in my stomach. I get an upset stomach. And, of course, the other one, if we're talking about what happens in your body, you tense up. So you can start noticing, are my shoulders going up and tensing up? Am I breathing a little faster or not at all? That's something else I do is I hold my breath and that gives me a sign that I'm kind of anxious. Mm-hmm. And you can start to notice all these little tics that we have. And sometimes I don't know I'm anxious until I feel sick to my stomach, and I'm like, oh, my body's trying to tell me I'm anxious. I need to do something. So a good sign is check our bodies, check what's happening, and kind of analyze, am I tensing up? Am I going faster? And then once we know that, we can address it a little quicker.
Yeah, and so, okay, so like your body starts feeling, you start feeling bad. You feel weird, feel like something's off, you're feeling nervous, you're racing, maybe heating up a little bit, not kind of the anti-chill, right? I mean, it's like,
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it.
Okay. Just a quick question here. I mean, are we at risk of finding ourselves in that place, necessarily if we don't take some of these preventative measures? I mean, is it how big of a risk is this to start feeling this way?
Well, Truthfully, I think anxiety is something that we all experience on a pretty regular basis. Same with sadness, anger, any other emotion. But I think a global situation like this could certainly. The reason we're talking about anxiety today is because I think that global catastrophes are primed to exploit our anxiety and to make our brain start thinking in a fearful mindset and being hyper vigilant. And sometimes this is a good preventative measure. A certain degree of anxiety keeps us making sure that we're being safe and making conscious of the choices around us. But where it gets to be an issue, as with any emotion, is when that emotion is turned up and up and up and up, and we don't always have the skills to manage the intensity of the thing we're feeling. So yeah, a situation where we're all have to stay inside and we can't leave, and it's hard to get social situations, and there's fear on every news channel. Yeah, I think this is targeting anxiety right in the center of it.
Nice. Yeah, good. All right, well, good. All right, so all of a sudden, I'm feeling nervous. I'm feeling rushed. My palms are sweaty. My feet are sweaty. My thoughts are racing. What do I do?
Well, today we're going to hit on 5 techniques, and I encourage anybody listening, you can go on the internet and Google coping skills, and they can give you hundreds. Today we're going to hit on 5 specific ones that I think is a really good jumping off point that can cover some of our bases. And the first 3 we're going to talk about are things that you can do with your body. The last 2 we're going to talk about what you can do with your mind. So starting with our body, sometimes a good way out of our own head when we're fantasizing, when we're living in catastrophe, is to actually engage something in our body that forces our mind to attend to the exact sensation that it's feeling and keeps the racing thoughts from kind of taking us away. You know what I mean? So on that note, we're going to start with something I like to call sensory activation. I don't like to call it. Everyone else calls it that. I don't know why I said that. I like to call it that. But we call it sensory
You call it whatever you
activation.
want, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. And it's something that you do directly to your body. This includes holding ice cubes. That's something that your brain must attend to, that sensation. Sometimes it can look like eating hot something, like hot peppers or hot sauce. Again, your brain has to attend to that sensation. Even little things like changing the thermostat a couple of degrees, taking a shower, anything that has to engage your 5 senses, that your body must focus on that, can help. And this is really for when anxiety is kind of bordering on panic attack. We use this a lot in panic attacks. And anything sensory can help bring us back down to earth.
Is that why when you see in movies and things like that, they slap somebody in the face and they say, "Calm down"?
I've never thought of that reference, but I guess that's why it works.
Yeah. Well, if anybody's freaking out, maybe it's good. It's going to help both people. It's going to help you calm down. It's going to help me get a little frustration out.
Nate Lee says, if you're feeling anxious, smack yourself in the face.
or somebody else, find an anxious person. Smack each other.
with something, you can't use your hand because of social distancing, but maybe like some kind of hand slappy gummy thing that you get from the joke store or whatever.
One of those air guns from high school. Smack.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. Okay, well, I'm gonna take that to heart, and then I'm gonna blame you if anything bad happens, because the professional told me to do sensory activation. Okay, so what else? What can we do with our body?
So kind of in that line, we're gonna stick with this. This works. This next one works a little bit like sensory activation, but it goes a step farther. And that is good old-fashioned exercise. I know, it sounds basic, but truly with anxiety, it's such a good tool. Anxiety, it so manifests itself in your body, and it's this energizing emotion that just you can feel it all up and down. And sometimes literally working out anxiety is a way to get it out of your system. It's a release in a lot of ways, where anxiety is a pent-up emotion. And on top of that, it hits the sensory activation button, right? It's your body is engaged. Your body has to attend to the muscles that are hurting, or breathing in the lungs to make sure that you're surviving what is a high effort kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And just besides that, it's healthy. So it helps anxiety, but also it's just healthy all the way around.
Mm-hmm. And we had sort of touched on this even before this, was, this relationship between, internal experience and, the kind of the need to if it's out of whack, if it's getting heavy, big, loud, extreme, whatever, the relationship that expression, physical, has to that. Can you just help make that connection real quick?
I think a lot more therapists are moving towards what is called a holistic approach to therapy, and that it's the idea that body, mind, and spirit are all connected, and one affects the other. We've all heard the term hangry before. If you're not eating enough, it affects your emotions. If you don't sleep, that's another physical thing. Your brain, it's going to make you more sad, irritable, on edge, lethargic. There are certainly what happens in our body and how we take care of our body is directly connected to how we emote. And to go back to anxiety, when we're feeling anxiety, that affects then our body. We tense up, we stress out. So the reason we focus on body and mind is because by addressing all facets of the human experience, we can better target which ones work for us, and further, okay, so if I know that mind techniques work for me, what other mind techniques can be effective, and that will then impact my body. And we want to get this kind of circle of health working on all cylinders.
Awesome. All right, number three.
You ever watch movies where a therapist says to somebody, take a deep breath? Just go ahead and take a deep breath. It's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's one of the most effective things you can do for your body, especially for anxiety. Like we talked about, when anxiety is hitting, your mind's going 100 miles an hour. You're not breathing as well. Either you're breathing too quickly or you're not taking deep enough breaths. And what happens then is that your body's not attending. It's not at full capacity to manage the emotion, because you're not giving it the oxygen it needs. So taking a few deep breaths, it slows your mind down. It gives oxygen to your lungs as well as to your brain. So you can slow yourself down, think a little bit more clearly, and not let this runaway train of anxiety kind of just take you away. There are different techniques you can use. My favorite, easiest techniques is something called box breathing. And it works in cycles of 4. So you would breathe in for 4 seconds, hold that breath for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 more seconds, and then hold again for 4 seconds. And repeat that as many times as you need to. If you have a bigger lung capacity, go for 5 seconds. But there's a lot of different breathing techniques you can use, whichever one works for you. But it's a good starting point for slowing yourself down when you're feeling like you're starting to ramp up at a level that's just not fun.
Nice. Take a breath.
Yeah, take
Cool.
a good old-fashioned breath.
I love it. Okay, and now it sounds like that's physical stuff, right? I mean, with your body, I'm feeling anxious. Take some breaths. Move your body around. Encourage and engage the senses. Take your mind off it. And so,
yes.
for those of us who would prefer, or maybe I'm not sure if I'd call it easier, but if we don't really want to leave the couch, what can I do without going on a run?
Yeah, and this is why we hit on a bunch of different ones, because different temperaments and personalities react to different kind of coping skills, which is what we're hitting on here. And so the first, now we're going to move on to some cognitive techniques. This is stuff that you can do with your mind to directly confront whatever the thought is. Because I don't know about you, but when my brain's incredibly anxious, it doesn't always have the best judgment. It usually thinks in terms of these generalities and these black and white thinking. There's something me and Nate are going to have a later podcast on called cognitive distortions, where we're going to hit on, there's about 10 or 11 different kinds of ways that your brain tricks itself and fools itself and kind of lies to itself. And sometimes what can cause that is this underlying anxiety. So when our brain's not telling us maybe the whole truth, the first good technique we're going to talk about is called checking the facts. It's where you remove emotion from whatever you're experiencing and check the exact facts of the situation. So let's go back to the original example I used. I think maybe a common fear that we're all having right now is, am I going to hurt anybody I love because I was careless? So I went to the grocery store. I came home, washed my hands, and disinfected whatever, but my brain is telling me, you picked up something from somewhere. You weren't careful enough. Oh, no, you weren't careful enough. What about your poor Aunt Bessie? Well, she's old. She's getting up there. You hung out with her 2 weeks ago. Did you put her in danger? Oh, no, I've killed my Aunt Bessie. And then we're reacting emotionally at the level of I killed Aunt Bessie, even though nothing has happened yet. So a good option is let's check the facts of the situation. The facts are, I went to the grocery store, I washed my hands, I disinfected. That's the facts. That's all the facts we have. And you cut it off there. And then anytime your brain starts to go, oh, but you probably did this, you try and slow it down and go, is that a fact? No? Okay, we're going to come back. Fact is, there's a something that we need to be careful about, and that we have a power to take care of ourselves so we can help those around us. Everything after that is just your brain creating a situation to be fearful about, even though that situation has not happened yet. So that's number one. Yeah,
the facts, right? Exactly. What's really happened? I am definitely guilty of thinking, there's more to it. I think we are going to talk more about this later, but making assumptions and maybe creating dots to connect them, even though they're not really there, and refocusing again, refocusing on what facts have happened. That's awesome.
And I think this also can look like, if we want to take a more generalized view, it's like I passed someone today, they looked at me funny, and what does our brain immediately do?
Right. What
did I do wrong? It's what did I mess up? Do I look funny? Did I act funny? Does this person remembers? And our brain immediately jumps to this, when it could just be that person saw something else, or that person read a text that made them think of something, and they weren't reacting to us at all, but our brain so quickly wants to blame ourselves.
Yep. And then, you know what, we had talked about this last one, and checking the facts seems to lead right into this next one, which is obviously go ahead and tell.
And that is reframing.
Yeah.
And if any of you guys have ever had cognitive behavioral therapy, which is, we're hitting on a lot of these are CBT related, but this is probably the most talked about technique in cognitive behavioral therapy, because it can be so useful. And this is where check the facts serves to completely and unobjectively look at exactly what is happening and add no emotion to it. Reframing is a way of adding positive emotion to it, because when our anxious mind is working, it's very rarely a positive thing. It's usually, like we talked about, catastrophizing and fearful. Reframing is just looking at the same thing from a different angle, from an angle that's not so bleak or black and white. So think of say you have a job interview, and they call you. You felt like you did great. They call you. They say they didn't offer you the job. We have two ways of responding to this. We could either, what our brain will tend to do is jump to pretty negative thoughts. I'm a failure. I don't have enough competency. I'm not good enough. It hits on these core fears: rejection, shame, and reframing. Kind of views it in a light that's just a little bit less shaming and embarrassing, kind of. So you'd reframe, okay, I didn't get the job. Maybe I just wasn't a good fit at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe my skill set, while valuable and would fit perfectly in another company, isn't exactly what this company was looking for. And that's okay. And it just means when I find the company that needs my exact skill set, it's going to fit even better. It's going to work even smoother. That still acknowledges that, yeah, it's frustrating that we didn't get a job that we wanted, but we're not adding on layers of shame. We're not adding on layers of helplessness and hopelessness, if that makes any kind of sense.
Right. Yeah. Look at it in what you've lost or where your opportunity is. That's, how common is that?
Yeah.
How common is that? People saying that, accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, glass half empty or half full. I mean, it's one of those things that we have control over in our mind, and we can make that decision. So feel powerful, people.
What was that?
People have the power.
Yeah.
So if you're out there listening, know that.
We can still mourn the loss of what we wanted and be like, oh man, it's really frustrating. Oh man, it's really sad that I had my hopes on this thing. We can validate that. But what we want to make sure is not to add anything past what it already is. It's sad and it's frustrating, but there doesn't need to be shame. There doesn't need to be rejection and just overall like self-judgment from that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Keep it in perspective. All right. Well, that's cool, man. I think those 5 things are so powerful. They're so they're beyond just the scope of this, but So when we talk about these 5 techniques, I mean, we can do things with our body and our mind. We can start breathing. We can work out. Hold an ice cube. Take your mind off it. Your mind will go to a physical sensation, and take advantage of that. It's like a brain hack. And keep the facts in mind. Focus on what really happened. I know intuition is a fun thing to play with, and it's fun to be intuitive, but the facts are the facts. They're a fact for a reason, and use those facts to reframe. Keep the facts in mind and see it positively, and know that we're gonna get through this. So yeah, I hope everybody gets something from that. Those are all so actionable, so useful. And yeah, man, Tom, obviously, thank you so much for sharing. And we are gonna spend another episode talking about cognitive distortion, which I'm really, really excited about. I think we're gonna do a little series on that one. So yeah, we'll keep that in mind and stay positive until then.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I'm really looking forward to the cognitive distortion one. I'm also looking forward to being in person with you.
Yeah.
So I can read your body language a little bit more, make sure we're not stepping on each other. For all the people listening, we are practicing our social distancing well and doing this over the phone.
Right.
And last thing I'd say to everybody is that this stuff, it doesn't happen on the first try. All coping skills are like playing an instrument or learning a sport. First time we do them, we're not always going to be skilled at them. They're not always going to work the first time. It's a skill. It's a talent that you work on. It's a muscle. And the more we try this, especially while we have all this downtime and time to work on ourselves, I would say keep working at it, keep hacking, And maybe by the end of this, you'll have a few more tools in your tool belt for all of life's anxious moments.
Awesome. All right, buddy. Talk soon. Thank you again.
See you guys.